But I think the tech industry, all fueled by VC money and greed, frankly, has over-indexed on technology the last 15 years. So the 40 and under generation that got out of school, college around 2007 to 2012, got into the workforce, they're really suffering from this kind of false doctrine, false narrative that they've been sold. And a lot of them, for the very first time, are hearing things like the 4Ps, or for the very first time, this idea that brand can actually help amplify the effectiveness of demand gen, because previously they've been told brand is a waste of money, it's unmeasurable, you just need to over-index on demand gen.
So, hey, Steve.
Hey, Paul.
For the audience listening, I actually bumped into Steve on LinkedIn, where he is constantly found in the comment section under posts, helping people understand and debunk and demystify and clarify all things marketing. Now, that's where I sort of started to enjoy some of the commentary, and I reached out to Steve, and here we are. So, Steve, why don't you take a second and sort of introduce yourself and what you do and who you are?
Yeah, thanks, Paul. For those watching that are not familiar with me or my background, I've got kind of a blended background of 10 to 15 years on the brand side, working in a variety of marketing and sales roles, all the way up and through, including CMO roles and both VPs of sales and marketing simultaneously, so equivalent to CRO. I then spent about 14 years applying that expertise to build my own marketing consulting firm that I grew 0 to 20 million in annual revenue in just 3 years, and ran that, as I said, 14 years fairly successfully, did well with that, serving a variety of medium enterprise and Fortune 500 accounts around the world. Heavy on tech, but not exclusively tech. So did the agency consulting piece. And then for the last 10 years, I've worked in two capacities. One is in brand roles, either as a full-time marketing leader in a CMO role or a fractional marketing leader. And then the other capacity is helping B2B agencies sell to CMOs, sell into B2B sectors, giving them really the voice of the customer, the voice of the CMO perspective on everything from service design to how to show up and have meaningful conversations.
By the way, I want to make sure that I give full justice to your profile.
That's okay.
There's something that doesn't come through in what you just said, but Steve's has worked in a very senior capacity at Accenture as like a CMO with Hewlett Packard, Aston Martin, and then there's so many other things, right? So he's really coming from a very wide spectrum in terms of experiences. I think you also mentioned earlier when we were talking sort of offline around some of the meaningful exits that you might have had, worked with startups. Did you want to throw that into the ring?
Yeah, and just for one point of clarification, my time with Accenture was actually a company that was acquired by Accenture. So I don't want anybody that's the CMO at Accenture saying, hey, wait a minute, I don't think you were the prior CMO. But anyways, yes, an acquisition. And that's a great segue to your question about acquisitions. Excuse me. So I have advised multiple companies, small and large, small meaning 3 to 5 million in revenue, large in the hundreds of millions, through M&A exits where I have been a key part of the revenue team, including one of my former employers. It was about a $180 million company that sold for just under $700 million to a Canadian acquirer. It was a Canadian company being sold to a Canadian $1 billion plus acquirer. So yeah, I've been through a couple of those. I got a very near miss with my own $20 million marketing firm back in 2001, and his life is about timing. My timing was not so good. My exit for nearly 19 million, which would have been my payout, was scheduled for August of 2001 to sell that business. And that got delayed by 1 month to September. And we all know what happened on September 11th, the Trade Center bombings, terrorist attack in New York. And that really scuttled all M&A work. So I had a very close $18.5 million exit. But as I said, life is about timing, and that timing didn't work out. So I've been on both sides of the M&A coin.
Yeah, you can never predict what's going to happen. So I would say that you're just a wealth of knowledge. And one thing that I really enjoy about when I like find you in the comment sections or even the content that you're write on LinkedIn, you're pretty active there, is that you're coming from this sound place of like very clear fundamentals. And I think that would be a great place to sort of navigate and start the conversation. steer the ship, as we say. So one of the things, and this will be a little bit of fun just to kind of open the conversation, is because you've been in so many different organizations, seen so many things happen at different scales and levels, gone up, down, left, right, in like a four-dimensional way over your experiences. So what are some of the common patterns that you're noticing today that people are often missing when it comes to marketing? That is a very open-ended question, and feel free to start anywhere where you feel comfortable, and then we can go from there.
Well, I know that you got a kick out of an article I wrote a couple of weeks ago around the 4 imperatives to B2B marketing success. See, we haven't even gotten to the punchline and you're already laughing. But it really did take on what are myths and misconceptions that I really felt passionately about when I wrote the piece that we need to get a better grip on as marketers. And so without going too much into a deep dive, going back through those, the first kind of imperative is rightly defining what is not just a TAM, a total addressable market, but what is actually an accessible market to your company that's both accessible and obtainable, meaning they like to buy the way you like to sell, right? Same channels, same go-to-market motions, et cetera. And more importantly, one of the, I think, concepts you really liked was the idea of not just an ICP, which is as sellers, the way we try to identify our ideal customer profiles, but the buyer, if we went around on their side of the table, looks back at us and says, are you an IVP, an ideal vendor profile for me to buy from? And so I think that the first of those 4 imperatives was around rightly kind of taking all the exaggeration and everybody on the planet that fits 3 criteria could be a potential customer, and really reining that in more realistically. And so that was the first of the 4 imperatives. And then the second one was really around the idea of truly understanding like the basic fundamentals of what is a sales lead. And again, this might sound kind of pedantic, but marketing and sales don't have the same worldview on what a sales lead is. And as I mentioned, I started my career in sales before going into marketing. So I feel I've got an unfair advantage in understanding what a lead is. And if I need to make a quota, right, to keep my job as a seller, I need people who want to talk to me. They want to talk to sales. They're hand raisers, right? They filled out a form. They requested a demo. They want more information. In other words, they want to speak to me because I've got to take them through the process ultimately to close the business. Marketing thinks leads are people that have had multiple interactions with downloaded content. They've attended a webinar, listened to a few podcast episodes. They assign some sort of Mickey Mouse random score. They send that over into CRM, and then they tell salespeople, well, these are what we think are leads, and we call them MQLs. And we all know it's a lot of hogwash, but that's for another time. So getting aligned with sales around basic things like what is a lead versus a learner, somebody who may be interacting with your brand and your content, but they're not in market to buy right now. They might be a year from now, so nurture them, but don't send them to sales with some fake scoring, right? A third area that I talked about was really understanding buyer behavior. And not enough marketers have carried a sales bag, right? But also not enough marketers spend time actually talking to these ICPs they've defined, right? So they become like a Sasquatch sighting. They're this mythical thing that you've defined, right? But you've never actually seen one. You've never really talked to one. So, I really have this problem with, marketers spending more time behind dashboards than talking to these ideal customer profiles that they profess are critical to growth. And then, fourthly, from that comes and cascades out in that article, then a lot of the processes and workflows and things that we've come to accept as truth, like intent data, that it's a useful data set, but it's really not intent. You don't know that it's intent till you really go verify it. So I think those are 4 things in that article. And then going beyond that, some of the things I'm very passionate about that I write about quite a bit is and I think there's a coming back to our senses, particularly in B2B tech marketing over the last few months. A lot of people are writing around, hey, we need to invest more in brand. Hey, we need to maybe not use so much AI to write all of our content and our automated emails, and maybe we need to show up to build trust and authenticity with buyers. Wow, novel concepts, right? Those have been true for thousands of years. So I think some of the fundamentals around brand, around marketing, driving product, once again, maybe marketing taking back their 4 Ps and controlling product and price and just a renaissance of fundamentals. I think those are super important. And it's unfortunate, but quick closing comment I'll make on this is, because I've worked across B2B sectors, a lot of them from automotive to banking to industrial to manufacturing, et cetera, those industries aren't as punch drunk on technology and dashboards as the tech sector is. So they don't have as much course correcting to do. They've always kind of held on to the fundamentals and selectively used technology. But I think the tech industry, all fueled by VC money and greed, frankly, have over-indexed on technology the last 15 years. So the 40 and under generation that got out of school, college around 2007 to 2012, got into the workforce, they're really suffering from this kind of false doctrine, false narrative that they've been sold. And a lot of them, for the very first time, are hearing things like the 4Ps, or for the very first time, this idea that brand can actually help amplify the effectiveness of demand gen. Because previously they've been told brand is a waste of money, it's unmeasurable, you just need to over-index on demand gen. So there's a lot of this kind of stuff, a mouthful there of concepts. But yeah, man, you said it's open-ended, and you're right. There are a lot of areas we've got to get people back to center, and I think hit the reset button to go do really great selling and marketing.
Oh, I love it. We're not even like 10 minutes in, and it's like we have so much cool stuff to unpack and share with the audience. So in fact, I would want to go a little bit into some of the high-level stuff that you talked about. But first, one sort of very tactical, I would say, kind of question, which is to do with culture and org design a little bit. And this comes up so many times on LinkedIn that I'm like, how is this even a thing? Which is, there's always this like war between marketing and sales where, guys, you're working towards the same goal. So what is it about that quality input or, quality like garbage in, garbage out, or incentive structure that's causing these conflicts? And what do you feel or think is the way they're approaching it versus how they should be approaching it?
Yeah, that's another huge one to unpack. And so I've got my iPhone here. I'm going to make sure I time my response so it's
no worries.
But I think there's three building blocks here. Again, remember, for anybody listening, I have led sales organizations. I've been a frontline quota carrying rep at 23, 24 years old, right out of college, all the way up into my 40s. So I do have, I hope it's a pretty objective and unique perspective, because I've led sales, I've led marketing, and I've led both at that CRO equivalent. So I think the first of the three things that I think can be bridged and solved, but they're going to take some work, is neither discipline really understands the other well. So marketers tend to carry a little bit of arrogance and superiority. We're masters of all these tech tools. We're masters of all these things. The sales people are kind of tribal, and they only kind of know how to go out and, do basically complain they don't have enough leads, blame us and all. And there's this real divide that I really, I mourn this. It troubles me. It doesn't need to be that way. And it's fortunately not the way it's run when I run those two organizations. But so you have a lack of understanding. Marketing, I think, kind of looks down on sales, doesn't view them quite as sophisticated, et cetera. And sales views marketing as incredibly disconnected from the real world, with all of these hypothetical models and buttons and levers and dashboards, but marketing really never spends any time in the field talking to real customers. And there's elements in truth in both, right? But there's also a lot of, frankly, unnecessary conflict. So there's a variety of ways to do it. You could hire CMOs who have also sold like me. You could hire sales leaders who maybe started in marketing. So you have that. You could hire a CRO that's done both to try to bring them together. But in a lot of organizations where you've got a sales leader and a marketing leader, that's all they really know, they're going to have to make a concerted effort to learn the other's world. And I'll give you a couple of quick things that I have done before, even as an experienced sales leader, to still build a bridge with sales organizations when I've come in as a tech CMO. One of them is sit every Monday in their sales meetings. So I've worked for multinational companies where we had sales directors or P&L owners of a sales number on multiple continents. So Monday morning, we have our calls with Europe and Asia because they're ahead. Monday afternoon would be US, Canada, right? Or in Mexico. And I've been in the calls as a CMO to hear for myself what the challenges are in the quality of the lead flow, what the challenges are in getting leads to opportunities, and what the challenges are getting opportunities to close. I've also sat in the win-loss analysis meetings. I've made my demand gen directors sit in those meetings Just by showing up, just by taking notes, just by asking thoughtful questions, just by being willing to listen, you're building a bridge with sales to say, hey, this is a very different marketing regime because they seem genuinely interested in kind of understanding our world a little bit. The other thing I've done is I've done live sales ride-alongs in the car, in Toronto, in Chicago, in LA, in London, in Southampton, in France, of riding along and actually going to major account meetings. That's both for existing customers and for prospective deals in the pipeline, where they're like, wow, the CMO is showing up to, also come to the meeting. But it's, again, to observe dynamics, to really get a feel for what the sales cycle's like. Key sales pushback questions, all that. Why, man, I can take that back to my marketing team and really think about content, messaging, product feature sets, price strategy, all the things I can do to better equip sales. So of the 3 pillars that I said I believe are one of the reasons you have this huge dissonance is, one, the groups don't understand each other and they're not kind of walking a day in the life of the shoes of the others to really get to know them. And I just gave a bunch of examples how I, as a marketing leader, go out of my way to try to walk in the shoes and really build the bridge with the salespeople, not symbolically, but genuinely. The second of 3, the second reason things are broken is the reporting and scorecarding of how the 2 groups get scorecarded and evaluated, right? Now, I didn't say compensation systems, but that typically follows, right? So people will react and play the game based on how the game is scored. So if you're going to score marketing on leads, marketing is going to blow up a bunch of leads. And that, when I say blow them up, just put a bunch of junk in the pipeline. But if they're scored or they're, evaluated based on opportunities, how much real pipeline have we gotten? Then it changes the game, right? So there's a lot of things on reporting and scoring that I think are disconnected. I'll just leave it at that for the sake of brevity. The third and final piece is the go-to-market orchestration, where it's viewed like running the 400-meter relay at the Olympics, right? Brand runs the first leg. They create awareness in the market. Then they hand the baton to demand. Demand runs the second leg. Demand hands the baton to sales. Sales runs the third leg to close the deal. And then sales hands it off to customer success or customer marketing to run the fourth leg, right? And when you've handed the baton off, you're kind of done. And you watch your teammate run around, go down the rest of the track here. That orchestration is just going to preserve these types of I did my job, siloed responses. I got the leads or I closed the sale as opposed to thinking about the orchestration. And yes, you've got people that are supposed to own certain steps of the process, but the orchestration and the way that you share information, the way you're organized, maybe into pods, where imagine a scenario if a company is selling to say 5 industries or 5 target market segments, where you had brand, demand, sales, and expansion all working as an orchestration team to just focus on healthcare or just manufacturing. Or imagine how that works, where everyone sits in the meetings together and they're together owning the pipeline and the growth of the revenue. Not that they're all incentivized the same. They got to be incentivized based on their contributions. But I'm just giving you a hypothetical of how would the world look different if we organized around customer pods or market pods as opposed to task silos. And then we wonder why things get siloed.
You're speaking my love language, by the way.
It's common sense, Paul.
I saw one of your comments recently. It was like, if there's silo, that's got to do with a little bit of leadership problems happening. Now, where have you seen this done really well? Is there any examples that you can think of that you could share light on? That would be, again, helpful to put, connect the dots for the people listening.
Yeah, so I've seen this only done, and it's not to say that people watching might not say, oh, I've seen that 8 or 10 times. So I can only speak to my experience. I've seen this done as a pilot inside of a couple of large tech firms like Dell. And we began testing this way back in my former employer, Compaq Computer, prior to HP acquiring them in 1998. So I was at the original, back in the 90s, Compaq, which was a high-flying computer hardware company where we went beyond, SMB versus medium enterprise, large enterprise, and all that. But we actually integrated go-to-market groups and some of the sales and channel pieces as a collective. But I have piloted this with a couple of clients of mine recently, meaning last 3 or 4 years, kind of since COVID, about, why don't we take one market so we don't disrupt the sales and marketing teams and miss revenue, but let's just take one and let's go pilot what this might look like to try to get some qualitative feedback as well as some quantitative results on, does this team perform better? Are we shortening sales cycles? Are we seeing higher ACV value deals? Are we getting in the door earlier and often with some of the target ICPs that may be in an ABM account list? So I'm aware, I've seen it, I've observed it, and I've been a part of it in a handful of examples. But it is a bit of a departure, and you kind of have to have, I think, leadership who are willing to say, we want to go to market being customer centric. Everyone says it, but the real proof is, are you willing to organize and budget around it, right? Because until you're willing to do that, it's really just lip service. But this idea of market centricity, customer centricity, we're going to organize revenue teams. They're not called sales and marketing anymore. They're revenue teams, but we're going to recognize for each of the segments that we sell into, their buyer journeys look a little different. I mean, think about this for a minute. It just popped into my head. Let me even reduce it. I said, let's say a company's selling into 5 different types of market segments. Let me just simplify this to 3. Let's say you had 3 types of markets is a company that you're selling into. One of them has a sales cycle that's 3 to 6 months long. Another one has a sales cycle up to 12 months long. And another one has a sales cycle up to 2 years, right? Based on the complexity of the sale, the cost of the sale, maybe regulatory implications, a variety of things that impact the sale. Well, it's pretty difficult to organize a single sales team or single marketing team that has like 3 simultaneous go-to-market states based on 3 wildly different segments, right? It's a little schizophrenic. I mean, if you're working in the marketing team on copy or a campaign, you have to almost like remind yourself, okay, now which segment is this for? What are the buying dynamics? If they have a shorter sales cycle, 3-4 months, maybe I have to go a little bit more offer-driven copy and things because it's quick on the buying cycle. If it's longer, you've got to go more educational. You're in it, it's a marathon, not a sprint. Therein lies some of the easiest starting points if you introspectively, as a business leader, look at your business and you've got segments with different buying dynamics, channels, journey durations, things that are important to them. Those are really good indicators that you might have a great opportunity to go test building a market, I call them pod or team, but a market team. It's a revenue team geared around, we're going to build process, we're going to build the motion, the go-to-market motion. We're going to build in staff the expertise. We're going to build process. And 5th, we're going to build scoreboards, right? The scoring and reporting aligned to how that market prefers to buy. We're going to remove friction and make it irresistible to do business with us because we understand them better than any of the other competitors who are doing inside-out design. They design their sales and marketing teams in their silos from the inside. And however that shows up in the market, well, you know what? Customers are just going to have to deal with it, as opposed to outside in.
You just ran past something super critical, which I think probably 99% people miss, is how do you said something like scoring based on how people buy.
Yeah, I mean, so when I'm talking about scoring, of course, I'm not talking about lead scoring in this case, to be clear for anybody, but and you didn't mean that either, but score carding. In other words, how do you keep score of, the winners and the losers here, how well you're doing from a performance? And that's again another thing I'm pretty passionate about. There's a big disconnect, and it's because I run a lot of ICP interviews for a lot of companies around the world and a lot of agencies. And when you talk to decision makers, director, VP, or C levels, how they buy, where they go, right? The Slack channels, the forums, the communities, the trusted peers, all of that. And then you made a list of those buying channels and buying behavior, and then you were to compare side by side the marketing and sales activity that companies invest in and the proportion of that investment. It's almost like an inverse curve. I've actually done this for Verizon and a couple of other large clients going back 7, 8, 9 years, where we went out and literally in the medium enterprise markets and the SMB markets for one of their divisions, looked at where are they spending their money. They were missing or way short of annual revenue targets for this division that had a $1 billion revenue target. And we wanted to get into the why, and beyond mystery shopping and everything else, it was going and talking to a lot of these prime accounts that are trying to win. And how they were set up to sell is not how the buyer wanted to buy. And they were using a lot of the marketing that they invest in on their consumer wireless business, right? Billboards, IndyCar sponsorships, all the stuff they use for consumer wireless. And they were just using the same marketing organization to also run the playbook for medium enterprise. And they're approaching medium enterprise with a B2C bias. And they didn't even really realize it until we showed them the side-by-side of here's where you're spending millions in marketing by function and task. And then here's what your best customer prospects said is what they read, who they trust, where they go, etc. You guys are not in the places you should be, and you are in the places where they're not.
Steve, I think this is something that you had said, I think at the onset of the conversation, go where your buyers are. Number one,
Right.
like how basic is that? So I think that's I love that. And then I think another thing that you talked about, which I think is super, again, a very important lesson. I've heard this statement of like how we organize around the work, which speaks to culture. I think you said it even better. I think you said it like, how do we organize around customers?
Right.
I think that's a much better, because then you can plan for like, okay, so let's say, if you're like an Apple, you're like, okay, these are the people we're targeting we want to get them into the Apple Music subscription, whatever. This one, we're trying to sell the Mac Studio. And so those cycles are going to be very different for those two consumers. That's probably a really bad example, but I'm just saying that if you're organizing your teams around like customer pods around the customer, that's going to yield a very different experience, not only for the customer, but also how the team works together. I thought that was really brilliant.
Well, and here's what I've seen when I've talked to marketing people who have worked in this type of structure at, say, a manager or director level. When you come into work every day, it is so much, what's the word I want to use? It's so much less stressful. Not that you don't have stressful days, but you're able to focus and really become an expert in a segment area to really understand how that customer segment buys. You are able to develop much more thoughtful campaign strategies. You're able to develop much more effective activation and deployment of your marketing assets, because instead of coming in every day to be a Swiss Army knife, where you're a shared service marketing group trying to support like a hub and spoke, all these different market segments, it's still the same CMO responsible for all that. But instead of organizing by email marketing, social media, content, events, and then telling all those groups, it's schizophrenic. Every day, all day, you're working on short form versus long form, short buying cycle versus long buying cycle, low ACV versus high ACV stuff. And you have to keep switching in and out of character almost. Your teams come in every day, same head count, but you're organizing it not by task, but horizontally, really by customer. And so you have a social media person, a content person, a campaign person, a content person, a copywriter, all self-contained, but they become experts in the subject matter, the word taxonomy that the buyer uses. So we're talking their language, right? Their slang, their terms. You can begin to deep dive and truly understand the pain and gain drivers of those customers in those markets. Just the effectiveness of the work is that much better. And I don't know about you, but I'd like to get paid well in a job, but I also want to feel like when I drive home at night that I've done a great job, right? I want to feel like I'm making an impact on the business. And marketing teams that are super stretched and they're trying to serve a bunch of masters simultaneously in terms of all kinds of markets with all kinds of growth ambition, it's really, really difficult to ever become really good at anything because you're being average at a lot of things. And that can be really frustrating for somebody who takes their career and their craft really seriously. They look at it as more than just a job with some benefits. They really want to come in and do transformational work. You never really get to know deeply one or two segments. You get to know a lot of them kind of, iceberg level, down to the waterline, but everything below the water. You just never really have time to really internalize and to understand. So I think what I'm saying to all this is you actually develop better marketers.
If I'm not mistaken, I think Apple also organizes teams around in like this function in this way.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
Another brilliant thing that you said, I think another person I follow, Josh Braun, he's like the king of cold emails and cold outreach. The way he sort of describes it is like join the conversation happening in their head and they immediately feel understood. So I really it's kind of saying the same thing, but just slightly using different words. Now, having said that, I remember this early story of, I think it was Expedia, or I forgot which travel portal website it was. It was very successful. It is still very successful. but they have this policy that everybody has to jump on customer calls. Everybody, period. And I wonder what your experience has been there, or are there things that you've done or implemented or recommended that have helped organizations from everybody must talk to the customer kind of mentality?
I love that idea. The first time I got exposed to that was in the first Fortune 500 job I had, which I mentioned was at Compaq. And I actually worked for about a year and a half as a new product planner, developing, planning essentially multi-$100 million product lines. But I was working on the operations side that once we launched the products, it was the equivalent of like customer success and service and support side of it, of the way the P&Ls were structured. If a product marketing team launched a product and it say did $1 billion in revenue, but you had a $200 million worth of customer support, they netted that against the $1 billion in sales to show that you only did $800 million net revenue. And incentive structures were tiered on that. So the vice president of that division got less bonus. The director that owned that, she got less bonus as the product marketing director. The go-to-market teams got less bonus or however they were scored. And I thought it was really clever, the idea that you, from a P&L perspective, when you launch any product or service, you can't do a shoddy job and then just defer whatever the problems are later from a customer support or customer service to the quote service organization is someone else's problem. Now, I led off of that's an organizational example of how service is not the tail at the end of the dog, but it's bolted together as part of, we're going to look experientially at the product experience. And over that 4-year, let's say, time horizon of that product life cycle, there are financial disincentives for poor service experience. So now to the question that you asked, have I seen or been involved in situations where everybody as an employee has to listen in on customer calls or whatever? I've worked in the service organizations and operations, but I've also been in marketing groups, and I've seen examples where, yes, in addition to marketing maybe being forced to job shadow sales, marketing also needs to job shadow or listen to a certain amount of recorded calls or live calls on the servicing side to truly get an understanding of what the customer experience is. Now, you'd say, well, why does marketing need to do that? Well, if marketing owns product, marketing needs to understand how good was the product we delivered to the market or the service, right? Now in SaaS and in tech, where marketing has been emasculated and product has been stripped out and given to product engineering and product development, and product marketing teams have largely been emasculated in a lot of ways where they're viewed as, oh yeah, you do positioning and messaging, but you're really not going to drive the product roadmap. That's a technical engineering endeavor, right? Or when marketing has had price stripped away. No, we understand price is one of the 4 Ps, but really finance owns pricing, right? Sure, should finance be involved in helping to model the implications of pricing decisions? Yeah, but marketing should own lifecycle pricing, right? When do we take a price move based on competitors to hit margin goals? But when you have a marketing team that's emasculated down to just demand gen, you might have 50 marketers that listen to this and say, why should I ever have to listen to a customer support call or customer service? I mean, how does that help me as a demand gen leader? Well, I go back to, well, are you a demand gen leader? I'm talking about marketing leaders who are supposed to own the whole damn thing. So if you're product marketing, of course you want to know how good, right? What was the quality and the experience customers had with a product that, frankly, I brought to market in a product marketing team. So I think for companies whose marketing departments say, I don't really care about that, or I don't really need to know about that, I bet if you went in and looked at their org chart, it's because their marketing team is really just a glorified demand gen team. So if that's what your world is demand gen, then you would say, yeah, service. Yeah, I know somebody in the enterprise cares about it, but it's not really my thing, man. I don't get bonused on it. I don't get, scored on it. So why do I care, right?
There's another article that you wrote at the high level. It's to do with the obsession with metrics. And I saw Rory Sutherland also repost that article.
Oh, yeah.
I'm also a fan of Rory.
I'm a big fan of Rory. That was like a big feather in the cap. Hey, Rory thought there was something there interesting enough to repost. So
yeah, that was really cool. I was like, damn, Steve's killing it. And there's also another article that you shared about from TechCrunch, which was like what B2B tech gets wrong about marketing.
Yeah.
So I think that segues into sort of that thing that you wrote that Rory sort of reposted on LinkedIn. And then I think after that, we could go a little bit into, let's say, if you were called by the CEO or a founder of one of those tech companies, what are the things that you would want to do in the first 6 months? Because they've got all these bad habits. And what are the things that you would want to first have them unlearn? And then what are the good habits we want to start instilling? Almost like, so I think that could be sort of where, and I know based on sort of the time that we have, that could be a great place to sort of end. And it could also give people a lot of like education in terms of how to actually even think about the problem.
Yeah. So really what you're asking me is, how do you deprogram cults?
Yeah.
I'm going to give Dale Harrison credit for that. We were at dinner together in May in Austin for the Gartner B2B Symposium. And Dale told me this great story at the bar at Ruth Chris Steakhouse about cults and programming and deprogramming, right? I swear it was one of the best illustrations. So I'm doing a shout out to Dale Harrison in Houston. Dale gets credit for this and Dale can write about it. Anyways, so big thing to unpack. It's a really good question because, I still get calls and I still look at, full-time CMO gigs. I mean, I'm still open to those things if the right opportunity comes in. And I posted on this just a couple of days ago on LinkedIn, and it's gotten quite a bit of action in the last couple of days. But this idea that, when companies interview you for any role, you should be interviewing them just as hard, right? And it's healthy because a bad hire is not good for the candidate. It's not good for the employer. And in this case, it was somebody posted like, how do you know if you're interviewing for a CMO role, kind of what you're walking into, right? So I posted, and it was just like 6 things that I look for. And one of them was, I think it was the 6th thing in the series of just points I listed, was asking the CEO and the CFO a very simple question. If I were to role play this with you, hey, Paul, tell me, in the best of your ability, what do you think marketing does? What do you think marketing is, and what do you think marketing does? No right or wrong answer. I just genuinely want to know. And it maybe sounds like a sarcastic question. It's really not. In the way that I pose it, it doesn't come across sarcastic. I mean, it's just in the course of a conversation, might be in a bar, restaurant, wherever we're doing like final round interviews with the C-suite. But I'll just say, hey guys, in your own words, kind of like, what do you think marketing does? What should it do? Because what I'm trying to assess is, I'm not trying to play an intellectual game and look how much I know and they don't. It's really, I need to know where they're starting from at point A to know how far the gap is or where I need to get them to point B to rightly understand what marketing is as a function of what marketing does in terms of tasks and activities, so that thirdly, we can rightly measure marketing. Because if you don't really know what marketing should be doing as an organization, you're certainly not going to know how to rightly measure marketing performance. And this is where a lot of this myth and a lot of this stuff comes into play. So let me give you an example. If you're a CEO or a CFO and you believe marketing's job is to generate leads for sales, is basically an extension of the sales team, that's the primary role, then as you would imagine, all the conversations, all of the budget funding approval, all the headcount approval, and all the weekly reporting will be geared around leads. Now, is it marketing's role to help sales? Yes, but it's one of about 8 things that marketing does, going back to brand and product and price and research and insights, analyst relations, sales enablement, demand gen, there's the demand one, customer marketing, customer experience. I mean, I think I've listed 8, and PR and communications, 9. Okay, so marketing has a lot of things to go do. Part of it is the demand capture of the approximate 5% of in-market buyers in any given quarter that are in market. But what about the 95%? There's a lot of educating, there's a lot of brand building, there's a lot of getting on the day one shortlist. So when that company is ready to buy 6 months or 16 months from now, you get the inbound call to your sales team, right? Because you're one of the three vendors on their shortlist. Tons of stuff that marketing has to go do. So the first thing I want to know is kind of like, where are they? Where do I need them to land? And on a 10 scale, where 1 is they have no clue what marketing does, and 10 is they perfectly understand what marketing does and what it is. If they're a 7 or above, I can, or maybe a 6, but certainly a 7, I can get them where I need to go. If they're a 3, then you're probably going to spend a lot of your time as a new CMO or marketing leader fighting a lot of headwinds and having to do a lot of re-education because the things you need to go do and you need the executive buy-in, they're not buying in because they don't see the world the same way you see the world. So I believe it's really, really important in those interviews and those early processes to really get alignment. And I've done this in my last couple CMO jobs where, I really wanted the job, but I knew deep down if I couldn't get aligned with those other C-suite executives right out of the gate, I probably wouldn't last a year to year and a half. Either I'm going to quit or I'm going to get fired, but we're going to beat each other's throats, right? So I would tell them up front, hey, love everything about the process. We've gone through all of that, but it's super, super important. You and I get aligned on what marketing is, what marketing does. Now, with that as a setup, I'm going to fast track through answering, what would you do? Okay. So let's assume I get alignment with them. They understand marketing is 8 or 9 key functions. You've got to have the brand plus demand plus expand. We're going to take a life cycle revenue approach. We got to educate the market. We got to convert those ready to buy now. And then once they've turned into customers, we need to deepen those relationships over time to deepen loyalty and grow expansion revenue. Three revenue drivers: brand, demand, expand. So what would I do? Well, first 30 days, I'm going to go over to the sales leadership that hopefully I interviewed with, right? If I had that job, as I was going through the interview process, because that's one of the things I would require. I need to go talk to the sales leader because I have some strong opinions about how I want to orchestrate, go to market with them. And I need to know, are they open? Yeah, are they open to the ideas or not, right? So I think that first 100 days, what I want to do is first I want to go meet with sales leadership and I want to build the strongest bond I can, doing all the things I said 20 minutes ago in this call, this video, which is telling them you have my commitment to sit in on win-loss meetings, you have my commitment to be on all the global sales calls, you have my commitment to spend time in the field, so is my demand team. We are going to join you at the hip without suffocating you because we really want to be aligned. And then what I want to do, Paul, is I want to find out as quick as I can I get the sales leader to agree with me that the key to revenue growth is going to be in 3 areas? They also support to the CEO, hey, I got Steve's back as the CMO. I agree as a sales leader. We need to be doubling down on brand building because it makes a sales job easier for my sales team, right? When they call or they send an email, somebody recognizes the sending domain on the email. Oh, I know those guys, or, I know of them, and they have positive, association. I want to make sure that I've got alignment with the sales leader. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to stop over-indexing on demand gen, and we're going to go after 3 prongs of revenue orchestration: brand, demand, expand, right? On another call, I'll go into deep dive on all of them. So we're going to be doing brand building to help shorten sales cycles, improve win rates, get more inbound leads when people are ready to buy, to take pressure off outbounding, which is all good news for a sales team, right? If I don't have to make as many outbound sales calls because I'm getting a good balance of inbound. The second thing on demand capture, yes, this quarter, next quarter, we'll be running demand activity to help feed the pipeline, and then expansion revenue to drive revenue there. So if I can get alignment there, then the next thing I'm going to go do is I'm going to look at my org chart and my budgets in the marketing organization, and I'm going to say, hey, we're probably 90% of it's on demand gen, or 80%. That's headcount plus variable spend. I want to redraw the organization in the budgets, and I want to pitch it to senior management ASAP to say, I'm going to pivot from the way we've done things here, over-indexing on demand gen, because all we keep doing is feeding ourselves quarter to quarter, but we're never really getting ahead. And so I need to sell organization, budget, and process to align to the brand, demand, expand orchestration model that I've just gotten sales to agree is the way, hopefully agree, is the way we're going to go to market. So if you have a go-to-market strategy, but your organization, right, people, process, technology, budgets are not aligned to that, you got a train wreck. So that's, Paul, where I would be doubling down. And then also your reporting, what you report, dashboards you track, have to be reimagined for brand, demand, expand. So in your weekly marketing meetings or your reports to senior, C-suite, you're reporting on, here is the measurable brand awareness, category entry point association, CEP association among our ICPs. What categories of solutions and pain points do they associate us as being experts to solve, right? And the third piece is the unaided day one shortlist that we've achieved. In other words, you go out and you do surveys and interviews among your target ICP accounts. You're looking for unaided, meaning you don't help them. You ask them, hey, when you think about category X, what vendors come to mind? What solutions come to mind? What you're trying to find out is, are we top of mind recall? And then you can actually measure If you were to enter the market, right, from a propensity to buy, if you were to enter the market to buy, which vendors, if you could pick 3, are on your day one shortlist? There are techniques for measuring this where on the brand side, what you want to begin to demonstrate is more people know who we are, more people know what problems we solve. That's our CEP association. And thirdly, more people are willing to have us in their consideration set. That if they're going to go into the market Monday or 20 Mondays from now, we'd be one of the top 3 vendors they'd consider. That is a good leading indicator for demand. Then you have your second set of, your director who reports her demand gen dashboard. And third, you've got your customer marketing director who, she's reporting on loyalty, churn, and expansion revenue and referrals. That's another key thing when you've got a healthy customer base. They're willing to refer. So now you can look in CRM, you can look at lead source and all that on referral. You can tie it back to key accounts and you can say, hey, look, some of the efficacy measurements behind customer marketing is we are getting more year-over-year contract renewal. We're growing the LTV of the account in terms of growing ACV each year. We're driving referrals. We're driving customer case studies and references. All the things, this big flywheel of a healthy installed customer base. That, to me, man, is where you start really cooking with gas. Because now senior management goes, okay, I understand some things now. Marketing is more than demand gen. Cha-ching, ring the register. It's a win. I understand how to grow revenue across the enterprise. We need to be thinking more than just new logos with a short-term mindset. We need to be playing the long game, right? Both brand plus demand, and the long game being once we close the customer, it's not just throwing them over to a customer success team for churn abatement. And in fact, SaaS is really the only sector where they use customer success. I mean, if I were working for Kubota Tractor and I'm selling $300,000 or $400,000 pieces of construction equipment, I don't think we need a customer success team that follows those operators around for a year to say, hey, have you figured out how to use the front loader, right? I mean, so you don't even have customer success in other B2B industries, mining, construction, manufacturing. They do equipment training when they do the install and they power up equipment. But then after that, your reps are in there in your customer marketing, really trying to do customer events and education things and everything so they can sell more construction equipment or factory automation. So those are the things, Paul, I think that are super important. Get alignment with sales. Co-sponsor with sales to the C-suite, your go-to-market motion that you want to pursue. Immediately look at your marketing organization, look at org chart, look at staffing, look at budget, and look at process, and say, I need to realign these things to the motion that I want to go pursue. And then finally, I got to show up every week. And if I make my bed, I lie in it. So if I'm on a report as demand gen, then senior management's only going to think we're a demand gen group. I've got to report on all 3 pieces of the revenue pie. In addition to some other things like product roadmap, pricing strategy, all those things that lie outside of revenue that I said earlier are part of a correctly functioning marketing team. So that was a lot, but here's what I'll tell you is that that's what, in my professional opinion, a healthy marketing organization does.
The 2 immediate quotes that sort of come to mind is one is, first of all, when we see a lot of like, oh, the CEO doesn't get marketing. Well, what are you explaining to them?
Help them get there. Yeah. How are you educating them?
Yeah, exactly. And why I really like sort of where you started this thing, everything that you just talked about, is you first go start with like a very basic question, not to be like snarky or whatever, is like, well, what do you kind of understand about marketing? And then that kind of is like that seed, almost like the butterfly effect of like, if this is what you're perceiving, then that's what's going to inform the funding and allocation, which is going to inform the hiring, which is going to inform the function, which is going to inform, like, just with that one simple question, you're able to sort of deduce, and based on your experience, how they respond, you can figure out where they are at.
Totally.
And then the other thing that comes to mind when you were talking about some of these things, this is like an Elon Musk quote. He's like, the biggest problem with engineers is they optimize for things that shouldn't even exist. So you're going in there and asking some fundamental questions is like, do we even need this first before we can go optimize and scale it? People start in the inverse. They first automate it and scale it and then figure out if they need it.
Yeah, and I'm familiar with the Elon Musk quote. And yeah, I think the analogy to marketing is, and I see this stuff all over LinkedIn, and I just figured I don't want to keep calling it out because I don't want to be viewed as the bad guy, right? Every time this guy comments, it's like correcting somebody. I really don't want to be that guy. I remember when I was 32 years old in my career, and if I just believed a lot of this stuff, come to find out it's not true by the time I'm 40, man, it's a bigger fall. It's a harder landing, right? So here's to your point where I think this shows up a lot. And I got to believe if there's marketers that watch this, they'll find themselves saying, yeah, that's happened at least once in my career recently, or it happens every time I take a new job. And it's usually this: you inherit a model that you don't question, and the entire interview conversations are around how you're going to optimize it. So it goes like this, instead of asking like, why the hell are we using the demand waterfall and all this MQL stuff? Everybody knows it's not true. It doesn't reflect buying behavior. Instead, people go in like, oh yeah, here's how I improved MQLs at my past job, and I can improve them here by 15 to 18%. And here's how all they're talking about doing is optimizing the wrong things, as opposed to bringing your brain to work and kind of intellectually, critically thinking and going, well, hold on a minute. Why are we even having this conversation? Everybody knows it's complete nonsense. It's like Sasquatch again, right? Or the Loch Ness Monster. This thing called an MQL that nobody from marketing ever really qualifies. Data from Salesforce shows 85% of MQLs are not leads at all. But yet we just shove thousands of them to sales because it makes us feel good in a Monday morning report. So that is some of the stuff that drives me bonkers. It's just, why don't we question some of the things that we do as marketers that we know don't work? Now, I do this routinely. That's why I'm not employable in a lot of companies, because they don't want things questioned. They just want to keep doing dumb stuff. So, but that's okay, because you know what positioning is, Paul? We all know what good positioning is. Positioning is taking a niche place in the mind of the buyer, and it's very clear what you do, what problems you solve, who you serve, and it's very clear who you don't. So I'm incredibly clear. If you're a company using the demand waterfall and you think that's the way buyers buy, don't call me to consult, and I'm not taking a W-2 job, because we will never get along.
Like, I have had my own version of hitting my head against the wall. Like, okay, you guys don't clearly get it. You just want like this very narrow box, and you just want to stay. I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm not talking to an A player. I just don't put it on myself. I'm like, this is not an A player. Forget it. Let's go to the next door.
Well, I heard a great HR quote that I reuse, hence I'm going to use it now. I've been using it for 10 years. I love it, but it's so true. A talent hires A talent, and B talent hires C talent.
Exactly. That's brilliant. Yeah.
A players want to be challenged, right? The old saying, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room. I think a lot of A talent really likes spirited discussions, lots of rapid fire idea exchange, or if you're an introvert, a lot of reflection and good idea exchange. But I think you want to be pushed. I do. But I think people that are B players, frankly, have just enough of that insecurity. They don't want to be one-upped, so they hire C talent. So in a lot of organizations staffed with B players, what they do is they find C talent, which are followers. And we need Indians and we need chiefs, right? But I'm just saying, if you know in your heart of hearts as a good marketer that half of this stuff that's been run inside B2B playbooks for 15 years is nonsense, then how do you have any self-respect walking into a company that says, do more of it, right? I mean, there will be somebody that takes that job, but I'm not saying it's easy. I mean, like everybody else, I've had periods where, work is tough to find, or you're making half of what you think you should be making or whatever. It can be difficult, but everybody's wired differently. I'm not here to judge others, but at the end of the day, I've made before a lot of money and hated what I did Monday through Friday. And the lot of money is a good anesthesia for about 6 to 12 months after you've bought the expensive car and the nice home and taken 4 nice vacations, topping up your 5 of 29s and all that. But after a while, I'm just like, I just want to have adult conversations with some smart people doing some really transformational work where we just question things that don't make sense and we find better ways to go do them.
I love that. I think that's a great sentiment. In fact, the quality of questions tells you everything that you need to know about that person.
I think so. And it's about growth mindset. I mean, people that know me or listen to these videos, I'm pretty intense personality and I've got a lot of opinions, but I'm the first guy over a glass of wine or a beer at a pub that, if somebody points something out that I didn't think about, I'm like, you know what, that's brilliant. I didn't think about it. I make the notes in my, MacBook notepad or in a physical note. And I'm like, that's cool. I just got some enlightenment, an ability to look at something that I always thought was one way, and now it's really another way. And it brings me to another one of my favorite quotes that I don't know if we talked about this in our podcast last week, but there's a great Mark Twain quote that I love posting in a lot of this stuff where people have these really fervent opinions on things that turn out not to be true, and that's cool. But the Mark Twain quote is, it's not what you don't know that gets you into trouble. It's what you know for sure that just ain't so.
That's brilliant.
Right? And all of us, me included. I mean, we get conditioned to do things a lot of ways, and we just take it at face face value here and take it for granted that these are the way things really work. But like I'm saying, whether it's demand waterfall, lead scoring, a lot of these things that they really don't reflect, real buyer behavior. And you figure that out the first time you run 1 or 2 ICP interview studies. You're like, holy crow. 3/4 of what we do for marketing is not at all what these people are going to click on, read, or where they're going to go. So why are we doing it? And it really gives you, I think, revelation around, man, I got to go back and rethink like how we're going to market, because how did I end up here? It's just a lot of people following other people, right? It's FOMO and all that. But that's why I think a lot of these conversations, what I hope is if somebody walks away, I mean, they don't have to like me as a personality or anything, but if it at least inspires them to kind of rethink some of the things they thought were true, or at least look at them a little bit differently, and they become better marketers or whatever, then job done.
This reminds me of something, which is, again, one of those like stupid things, like pick a niche kind of arguments is, a lot of times you just hear people say like, nobody knows what they're doing. And I'm like, okay, I see what you're saying, but I just completely disagree, because there's plenty of people who know exactly what needs to be done, how to do it. You're just not letting them do it.
Yeah. Well, it reminded me, and Paul, I don't know if we commented on this, but a couple of weeks ago on LinkedIn, somebody, and I think it was just clickbait, and that's fine, but somebody made a post to the effect of, nobody who's giving advice on LinkedIn about B2B marketing has any clue what they're doing. And I'm thinking, really? So like people from Ehrenberg Bass and David C. Baker or Rory Sutherland or Mark Ritson or, none of these people know anything. So I was one of the first one to post and say, hold on a minute. Sure, there's a lot of charlatans and everything out there peddling their newsletter and their, master classes and all the, look at me, I'm in a folding chair on a beach, I make $1 million a month, and all this stuff, right? So there's a bunch of those guys. But there's also some smart people that really do know what they're doing. And they're posting about it. What you just have to have the ability to critically think. It's just like elections, but we won't go there, right? Can you see through propaganda, right? Are you voting for personality or policies? They are different. But popularity contests seldom ever helped vote in the right world leaders or the right marketing plans, right? And sometimes the echo chambers, whether it's Slack or SaaStr or LinkedIn, it's all about popularity. We dare not have a contrarian opinion to, I'm just picking on like Sam Jacobs at Pavilion or whatever, because clearly they are always right all the time. And I respect Sam immensely. I'm just like, he's a visible guy. Could be Jason Lemkin, right, over at SaaStr. And you do have a lot of people that may be saying some smart things, but they're not right all the time. They'd be the first to tell you that if they have any ounce of humility, and I think these guys do. So you've got to be able to critically think. If something doesn't sound right, something doesn't feel right, you're seeing enough evidentiary data that maybe it's not really reflective of how things really are, then it's okay to dissent a little bit, right? Don't attack people, but you can have a healthy contrarian conversation about, hey, I haven't really seen that, or that's not been my experience. Can you explain more? Can we offline maybe have a conversation? And I've got plenty of people, in LinkedIn that'd be like, oh, hey, you've got a really strong opinion about this or that, and I disagree. And I'm like, you know what? I reserve the right to be wrong, and maybe I am. I'm happy to book a 30-minute call, not to sell you to see things my way, but you talk first. I'll do the listening. Tell me what you think and why you think it, and maybe you're right. But we have to have these conversations, because just the blind following the blind, like you're talking about, gets us to where we are now as an industry. 15 years of VC-funded MarTech narratives, all built around not helping marketers become better marketers, but getting more revenue on sales tech and MarTech tools, all very self-serving. This was not a public service announcement, how to build the next generation of great marketers. It was all money-driven, greed-driven. Now what you have is people that are tool wizards and their fundamentals, marketing fundamentals, crippled. And it sucks. I'm glad I'm as old as I am coming up through is when I did. Because then when all the tech blitz happened, I kind of had the before and after of like, okay, tools are great for automation. Tools can help us with some efficiency, but don't confuse efficiency with effectiveness. Doing the wrong things more quickly and cheaply at scale are still the wrong things.
Exactly. Nailed it. I really like that. In fact, that's the litmus test that I look at. Like if anybody has a strong opinion about something, is like, how about just for a few seconds, let's just steel man and straw man both. Let's see if you can counter yourself and you have the ability to look at it not only from the point of view that you have, but maybe three other points of view. And that's something that we didn't debate in school. It's like one of the earliest things that we learned. I love that. I think critical thinking is one of the greatest superpowers, and asking questions, the quality of questions. I think we covered a lot today, Steve. This was a really brilliant conversation. My brain's like fully stimulated.
That's good. Well, job done there. Hopefully people that are watching will feel the same. But I always love these conversations. You're like the Renaissance man in terms of all the people you interview, all the things you have to know subject matter about. You're like this Wikipedia host, right? This Wikipedia brain behind a microphone. So it's super awesome. And, when you post this, if there's anybody that wants to deep dive in or push back or challenge any of the things that I've said or want to know more, I would invite them. Yeah, just book a call through the appointment link in my LinkedIn profile, or reach out with a DM, whatever. I'm more than happy to share that perspective. Fortunately, I've lived over in the UK. I've done business in Europe 30 years, and so I've got a lot of global perspective dealing with small, medium, and large companies across multiple cultures. And by for sure, what works in the US doesn't work in Canada, let alone, Romania. So we have a lot of cultural context behind a lot of things we all know work, but some core fundamentals are true about the way humans prefer to build trust with other human beings and do business with other human beings. And those things transcend culture.
Very well said. And by the way, thank you for giving the audience a way to connect with you. So
yeah, for sure.
And then is there a specific way that you would like to be contacted, or is that just LinkedIn?
Any and all the above. Yeah. LinkedIn, I've got a book an appointment link right up under the headshot in the main header banner. I've got, the ability to send me a connection request. Then, I've got my email and everything once we connect built into the contact. So you can go find my email and I can share it, do a Zoom call, whatever. So yeah, I'm probably doing 3 to 5 calls a week that are just pro bono, hey, I've got some questions, want to bounce some stuff off you. And it's just become part of my weekly pay it forward routine. Now I'm just blocking time and doing that just to help others. And man, I've had conversations with people from Belarus and Ukraine to the Middle East to Africa. It's pretty enriching. So it's pretty cool.
That as well. You're totally a purpose-driven kind of a person.
Trying.
We have one fun little activity that I do with all my guests. It's
the
called
number.
Wait, it's not focusing. Yeah, 3,001 questions all about me. And the audience doesn't know we had attempted to record a podcast before. We have gone through the motions before.
Right. Yours truly didn't leave his Riverside browser open long enough. So you're going to have a piece of one from last week. And then I'm not going to make that mistake today, and you'll have the full one. So yeah.
Actually, you know what? I could actually release them together. Subscribe to my channel, and then I'll give you the unreleased version. I'm just kidding. I'm going to put all of it out there. So, Steve, you're
complete with a Ginsu knife set.
So, Steve, you're going to pick a number between 1 and 3001.
I'm going to use today's date. How about the 27th? So we're going to use 27.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's an interesting way to pick a number. Okay, let's go. Okay, so have my parents ever embarrassed me?
Oh, yeah. I would say every parent has embarrassed their kid, right? At one time or another. So let me think about if you're looking for an example versus a binary yes, no. Let's think about one of those. Probably something just like a scolding in public or something that, you're taught in management, praise in public, reprimand in private. Well, I grew up in an Italian family. So like if it pops in your head, you say it and then you think about it afterwards. So I'm sure it's probably many, growing up at the grandmother's house, the Italian grandmother's house or whatever, where it's, don't reach for this, or hand slapped for grabbing a cookie before dinner, or maybe as a teenager, being called out where it's not maybe a discreet correction, but it's probably something more public where you kind of shrivel and think, oh man, that could have been discussed in the car on the way home, right? So we'll call it the unfiltered correction.
Okay, great, fantastic. We'll leave it at PG-13.
You got it, man.
Steve, I had a great conversation. I learned a lot, actually. And I'm really excited to get this edited and shared with the world. Any final words from you before we...
Well, you know what? You just gave me an idea with mythology. You know what we might ought to do?
Tell me.
We might want to create a zodiac astrology calendar.
Oh my God.
All of the like either Greek gods or astrology in the sky, right? The Dipper and, you know, Orion and all this. They're all mythical marketing characters or concepts. Maybe we should work on that as a piece, as a follow-up.
I'm down for that. I love it.
Or crowdsource it. UGC the whole thing, man. Put it out there like the 12 Days of Christmas and let people volunteer and then you build a crowdsourced.
Oh, actually, wait, that's even a better idea.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll put some initial thought to it. I'll share my thoughts with you and let's take it from there. I love it.
Awesome. Okay. Have yourself a great week.